How did you come to be a singer, and when did you first realize that you had this unique voice quality?
Well, you know, I was always told that I was musical, and I hated music lessons. I never could relate to the piano. They just assumed that I could play piano. I had long fingers. I was musical because I could carry a tune, but I never felt it as anything special. It was almost like a burden, like I'm supposed to be musical. I hated practicing the piano. In school, you had to play song flute, and then I graduated to clarinet in high school, and then I couldn't close the holes on the clarinet. It was always squeaking, so they put me on the saxophone, and you know, I dutifully was in the marching band, which I hated. It was the lowest rung on the social ladder in high school, the marching band. But then when I was in high school, one of my cousins, we were visiting up my father's family in Maryland, and he had gotten a gut string guitar for Christmas that I don't think he was that interested in. I don't remember why I ended up, or maybe I took it away from him. I just noodled around on it the whole time, and then when I was next visiting my mother's family down in Birmingham, my grandfather took me to a pawn shop and bought a $30 K guitar, which I still have. I bought a book, Folk Guitar, Volume 1, and I'd become a huge Joan Baez fan, Judy Collins, Buffy St. Marie, Bob Dylan. There was music played on the college radio station that I could get every night. And so I taught myself these 3 chords, and that's all I still know. 3 chords, that's all you need. And I don't know why that music resonated for me, but I could accompany myself and sing in the keys that were right for my voice, because in church, to me, the hymns are all written in male keys, and it was always too high for me to sing comfortably. So this way I could put the music where it was comfortable for me. And I just learned everything that I could. But I wanted to be an actress, and I thought this was just a side thing. But when I actually got the chance to study drama, really study drama, I had been playing the guitar and singing anywhere I could for any audience, and I realized that what was really resonating for me was music. It was just, I never occurred to me that I could make a living. You know, you could go to drama school, you couldn't go to folk music school. You know, so it was like, it's a little scary to think about going outside of that safety of a college education.
Excuse me, the drama school was college.
Yeah.
That's what you studied in college.
Right. And while I was there, I realized that I was not cut out for it at all, that it was music was where, if I had any true talent, that it was there. And that's when I went up to New York City with my guitar with no clue, not knowing a soul. I think about my dear poor parents and the terror, because I can imagine my daughters doing that now. I would have snatched them away, but they believed in me, and they just had to sit back and pray.
Without talking about Gram Parsons, tell us that story and why it has meant so much to you.
Well, Gram Parsons, of course, was a founding, he was in the, he snuck into the Byrds and took them down a country road, which I don't think they understood. And then he formed his own group with Chris Hillman, the Flying Burrito Brothers. But when I met Gram, he had left the Burritos and was kind of hanging out with the Rolling Stones and thinking about doing a solo record for Warner Brothers. And so I was playing at Clyde's, which is a big singles bar in Washington. And the Burrito Brothers, without Gram, he had left them a while back. Chris Hillman wandered in after they were finished to have a drink and heard me and was impressed. So he invited me to come sit in with them on that last night, which I did, and we probably did a country song. Anyway, Gram just happened to come and sat in with the Burritos, and Chris told him about me, but he said, but I don't remember her name and I don't have any way to get in touch with her. At which point, the woman who babysat for my very young daughter and who also worked for the promoter, this is one of those serendipitous things we talk about, said, oh, well, you know, I think you must be talking about Emmylou Harris, and, you know, here's her phone number. And I've talked to Chris about this since, and he said he really urged Gram, like, don't, you know, this is meant to be, you know, call her. And he did call me the next day. And so he came to my gig, and we sang a couple of songs between sets. And he left the next day, his young wife Gretchen. They left to go to LA where they lived with a promise of a ticket to come out and sing on his solo record, which I think I never really thought I would hear from him again.
But you did.
But it took almost a year. Apparently, there were some problems with getting a producer and yada yada, there were things. But Gram, you know, I didn't really understand or know country music, and I hadn't really sung much harmony. But there was something about the opportunity to work with Gram. I still didn't really get it on that first record, but I was going to get a check for $500 and a ticket to LA and a meal on the plane. And I was just, well, okay, let's just see what's going to... I had no expectations. Then I went out on the road and we started singing every night. And somehow by osmosis, my ears and my heart opened up to country music. I really heard the genius of George Jones, the beauty of the Louvin Brothers harmonies, the poetry of country music, the stuff that's deep down in the weeds, the washed in the blood stuff. That's when I heard it, and singing harmony, it was like you sublimate yourself to that melody, you know. And I really believe that is how I discovered my own voice. Before that, I was just kind of imitating a lot of people.
You played with some of the best of them. How did you get to the point where you were ready to do your own songwriting?
Well, oddly enough, when I was knocking around the village, I did a record for a very small label called Jubilee, in which I had written most of the songs. They're a bit sophomoric, but they're not terrible. And so I thought of myself as a songwriter. But then, when I got into hearing some of those great songs from my contemporaries, you know, like Rodney Crowell and Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt, and started recording these songs, great songs, all of a sudden I think I became a little intimidated. The bar became so high as an interpreter. I didn't want to just put a song out just because I'd written it. But I did write Boulder to Birmingham in response to Gram's death, because it was a devastating blow for. It was the first time I'd ever really lost someone who was close to me of my generation. You know, I'd obviously lost my grandfather had passed away, and I'd gone through that. But it was a different kind of loss, and it was so. It was a shock because it happened. It was so unexpected.